Hello, good morning.
Oh, we have a circle.
We have a circle.
How you been? Good?
Good.
Good.
How about you?
Fine. I'm home and everything is almost back to normal.
Almost.
Almost. No complaints, that's for sure.
You said you have a cat?
I do. She was my sister-in-law.
Right.
Sisters-in-law.
And it's been like a big adjustment for the cat?
Yes, after I moved out of the house for the 3 months, she was not, she cried a lot, and I never, even prior to that, I never even heard her meow. So. But now she's pretty affectionate to me.
Oh,
She never
interesting.
sat on my lap or anything. She, she sat in the corner and watched me, but now she's right on my lap every night, which is nice for me. I enjoy that. But she's good now. She's back to normal, whatever normal is.
Right.
But she's adorable. You have one too, don't you?
We have two.
You have two.
Mm-hmm.
They're a lot of work. But two, I think, is better for them. I mean, they have each other.
Yeah, we found one at a gas station one night, and it was like me and Ian and David and David's girlfriend, and so yeah, I can't say what would have happened if it was just me at the gas station.
Yeah.
But anyway, we brought him home, and we had a dog. Our dog was older,
Oh yeah.
and it was like within 6 months, about 6 months, our dog passed away.
Oh dear.
But so the cat was 10 weeks old, they think, when we found him.
Oh my goodness.
And so he kind of grew up, for 6 or 7 months with the dog.
The dog, yeah.
And as soon as the dog was gone, we thought, probably it's not going to be good for him to be by himself. Plus, sometimes we're not at home and just to leave him there
Right.
and all that. So we got another one. So they're good. It takes them a while to adjust. It took them a month or two to really, but they're crazy about each other now. Yeah. It's funny because he's the first one. He's big.
Oh yes.
He's like, I don't know, I think 17, 18 pounds.
Yeah.
And she, the second one, is like half of that or less.
Yeah.
But she holds her own.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
Did you get a dog?
No, I have a cat. She's a good kitty.
Good.
Do you know how old she is?
I think she's almost 4 now.
Okay.
Oh, pretty young.
Yeah, and she has feline HIV,
Oh yeah.
Oh,
so I can't have any other cats around because
Right. You would have to get another one that has it too,
yes,
I think.
yeah. Otherwise, they can give it to each other.
Right.
Yeah. But so she breaks out once in a while, but I've got all that under control. And
Probably that contributes to the
the crying and stuff.
just having to take care is more.
Yeah.
You got to think about more.
Well, and we're at
with
the
that.
vets quite a bit, so.
Yeah, yeah. Because we did have one incident with him a few months ago. He had like a blockage, which apparently for young males is like a common thing
Oh yeah.
in the urinary tract.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't fix it, they'll die.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
So it was scary because we knew something was wrong because he wasn't eating. And it's like he never says no to food, like ever. And he wasn't eating for a few days and by himself. So, yeah.
Was he drinking water? He wasn't drinking water either?
Yeah, he wasn't. I don't remember. I don't I can't remember if he was going to the bathroom or not.
Yeah,
We caught it early, I guess,
good.
and they're never sure without doing like x-rays and all that stuff. So they're like, try this, he might just have a bug, but he still felt bad, so that was a deal. But after that, he's been fine.
Good.
Yeah.
They're good company.
Yeah, they're good company. Mhm.
If I'm going out of town and I have a friend that will take her, and so I'll take her the night before, so I come home to an empty house, and it's amazing that there's no energy in there.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
It's like really quiet.
Yeah. Right.
It's just, I don't know if it's my imagination or what, but it's, yeah,
That's interesting.
it's a big difference, so, but anyway, she's.
So we keep windows open, and they're on this this place right next to the window, and they'll just look out for
Oh,
a
yeah,
long time, you know.
I open all the windows.
So the other night, I'm sitting like right next to him, and he's just looking out the window. Suddenly he goes, boom, and he jumped through the screen
Oh, no. Oh, no.
and ran out into the yard. And I was like, what are you doing? And so I open the door and I go out to the yard. I cannot find him. So Ian's out there, Sully's out there. We're looking, and finally we saw him. He was across the street, face to face with another cat.
Uh-oh.
Okay.
And the tail was puffy and all that. They weren't like meowing or anything, but just like looking and stuff like that. So we picked him up and brought him in. It's like, well,
So-
no more
so he
open
let
windows
you-
for you,
He
buddy.
let you pick him up then, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't scat when you
Mm-mm.
got near him?
Mm-mm.
Wow.
He just saw and didn't even think about it. He wasn't like staring and wagging his tail or anything. He just like, boom,
Probably glad you came
straight
and
through the
rescued him.
straight to the screen. It was crazy.
Whoa. Well, my cat will run from the front of the house to the back of the house. I have both windows open.
Mhm.
She scoots back, so she sees a cat
Yeah.
apparently or something,
Yeah.
and then she runs back to see him.
Right.
But
That's what our little one will do. The big
Yeah.
one won't do it. The little one will see one and then she'll run to the other. Yeah.
Oh, they're entertaining, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Yeah, they play with each other and they like to, play with strings and lasers. Yeah, there's even like YouTube videos that they'll watch.
Oh, is that?
There's channels devoted
That's
to
it?
cats.
I didn't know that. Oh,
So it's like
The music is.
snakes and lizards and lasers and
We're sitting in a circle.
they'll just
so
stare at
that's
it.
why we can
Sometimes
see
they'll
you.
you have to be okay with the TV getting swatted because
that's true.
ours is like right there where they can touch it. But anyway, they're funny.
I don't know. Wants to come and wants to go, so.
I don't know if I take a jacket or.
Hi.
We already had this morning.
It's gonna be really warm for
I
next
see a few
week.
cars out there.
It's gonna
So.
be high.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on Monday it's supposed to have a cold front through this the other way.
All right, we're gonna start with "You Are the Vine."
Okay.
You are the vine, we are the branches, keep us abiding in you. You Let's pray. God, thank you for being here with us. We acknowledge your presence, and we're grateful for the love that we experience in our hearts when you are near. We're grateful that we're tied to you and that the life that you have is shared with us. We ask that you would waken us and teach us today as we learn more about you. We pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, it is a pretty song, isn't it?
I didn't seem to, I've heard it a lot, but I don't seem to have known it very well.
All right, so this is starting a new chapter, and we're looking at page 180. Hello, come on in.
Good morning. Sorry, Billy.
No problem. So we are in,
Good morning, Lana.
Jay, good to see you.
we are in Devotional Classics. It's edited by Richard Rohr, and we're going to be starting a new chapter. It's on page 180. You can look up on the screen, or you can look in your books, whatever is good for you. Catherine of Genoa is the author of this chapter, and the title of the chapter is Waiting Upon God. I kind of thought I had a sense of what the chapter was going to be like and what it's going to be about, but it really is kind of in a different direction from what I had thought. I guess you could say it's about waiting, but it's a little bit different than that. So Catherine, born in 1447.
Just before
So
Columbus discovered America.
Yeah. So quite a long time ago. What, 500 plus years ago. Born to a prominent religious family, and then her and her husband, who it says were worldly, lost their money, and they both ended up living a life of poverty, but serving among the poor around a nearby hospital. Her husband passed away. She continued serving as the matron of the hospital. And she wrote about her spiritual life. Her works were called Life and Teachings, another one called Dialogues. So we're looking at some excerpts from Life and Teachings. So these are kind of her experiences with God, and it's actually a good chapter to come after the one we just last covered, because the one we last covered, we talked a lot about the love of God and experiencing the presence of God, and so this is her kind of take on her relationship with God. All right, so we'll start on page 180, little by little. The creature is incapable of knowing anything except what God gives to it from day to day. If it knew beforehand what God intends for it, it would never be at peace. At times I have thought that my love was complete, but later, as my sight grew clearer, I became aware that I had many imperfections. I did not recognize them at first because God's love for me has planned it, that I will achieve it little by little, for the sake of preserving me and keeping me humble, so as to be tolerable to myself and others. Every day I feel the motes in my eyes being removed as God's pure love casts them out. We cannot see these imperfections because if we saw them, we could not bear the sight. Thus, God lets us imagine that we are complete, but never does God cease to remove them. From time to time, I feel that I am growing, only to see that I still have a long way to go. They become visible to me in the mirror of God's truth, of his pure love, where everything I thought was straight appears crooked. All right.
You know, that's
A lot of good stuff there.
Somebody came out with the book called We Don't Know Anything for Sure.
Uh,
My husband said he thought he'd buy it for me because I say that so often. I'm usually the navigator on a trip when he drives, and that's fine with both of us. But he'll always say, "Do you know that for sure?" I'm looking at a map. I said, "I don't know anything for sure," so that's why you got the idea to say. This matched what I was saying.
Hey.
And you know, things you thought were really true when you were a kid.
Yeah. It's really, I think it's part of one of the biggest joys in life is there's so much more to learn. And the only thing that the only thing I guess that would kind of keep us from just enjoying growth is there's also a part of that process that's not fun, which is like you have to acknowledge your ignorance. You have to acknowledge that what you thought was true really wasn't true. And so this is kind of the process that she's talking about here. She's talking about, you know, one of the ways we can talk about this is imperfections. I personally like the idea of growth or like a journey, like a process that's laid before us. I prefer that, or my ego prefers that, because that way we have a goal that's like seems real, you know, the whole moving forward thing. Becoming more mature, that's like that can really happen, and it feels good to move forward. The thing of being perfect or imperfect, it doesn't so much feel like a journey. Perfection feels like an impossibility, or you know, just not realistic. And so when it's like if I'm holding myself up and comparing myself to perfect, it's like I don't get motivated to do anything because like I'm never going to be that. So, but there is another way to look at imperfections as one of the positive terminologies that's used is your growing edge, which is like your imperfections, like your problems, your shortcomings, the things that you need fixed, or that we need fixed in our lives. So we can look at these as imperfections. But kind of what she's saying here is that these are actually things that are part of a process. They're actually leading us somewhere. And they're not always going to remain the imperfections that they are. There's a usefulness to the imperfections. It's a funny line in here how she says, you know, these things are useful because when we see that we're not perfect, when we see that we need work, hopefully what it does is it humbles us, and that's helpful along the way. It's helpful along the journey. It's like if we came into a classroom thinking we know everything, we're not going to be as open to learning what is going to be offered to us. In the same way, when we go through life, if we don't have humility, if we think we know it all, or we're like, you know, I've been here long enough to know how this thing works, we can feel that way, especially if we compare ourselves to other people, and if we're if we're looking to kind of boost our ego, or it's easy for us to use our vision to look for people that we know are kind of struggling more than we are, or they're not quite farther along the journey, or they're facing a problem that we have already faced and overcome. So there is a way to go through life where, if the focus is not on our continued growth, but instead being so proud of where we are and looking at all the losers around us
Yes.
that haven't figured it out
Yes.
yet, and then kind of feeling better about ourselves that way, at the end of the day, that's not going to help, because then we move away from humility and into pride, and it ends up blocking the view of all the work we still have to do. And we'll see here a little bit later on, a lot of times these things are done in the context of charity, or in the context of, even we'll say, ministry, where it's like, oh, I'm reaching out to you losers, you know, because I'm no longer a loser, I will assist you losers along the way. But if our motive in that is to kind of feel good about ourselves, that can prevent our own growth. And the way she talks about it as we go on, it's nice, because essentially she's saying all of this growth stuff, God's the one doing it in us. The pace that we grow and those kind of things, we can't take credit for these. We just have to be in awe of the work that God's doing in us. And so if we were to be in a ministry setting, and if there is any help that we can give, it would just be to encourage the people around us to trust in God and in God's timing, and then we do the same. So that's a different attitude. That's a attitude of humility.
I sort of feel like we get messed up by a lot of religious terms. Like, I want, as a Christian, to be peaceful, but that's hopefully a goal. Because there are times in my life where I have to give up what I thought was a wonderful thing, but I have to give it up and make a change. I'm not peaceful through that process, but I will be ahead of it where I was if I can go through it.
What would you say would be the inverse, or the opposite of peace? Is it like anxiety, or is it conflict?
I think peace to me is, I know I'm comfortable with the way things are, and I know it's always going to be, it's okay. Well, sometimes it's not okay. I have to make
So
changes.
the other is being uncomfortable and.
But yeah, I've done it before, so I'm comfortable with my discomfort that I have now.
I see. Oh, okay. Right.
I just, sometimes it's hard to see the world in a new way, and you kind of get kind of stuck in trying to live it like I've always lived it. Maybe I need to make a little change.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, time has changed.
That's interesting, what you're talking about there, because being at peace with the discomfort
Maybe that's the
is
good
something.
word for it.
Yeah, it's in because there's an acknowledgement, like I'm gonna do something or say something stupid. It's inevitable, and it's like because I'm always growing, it's always gonna be there. I may not say or do the stupid things that I used to do, but there'll be some new stupid things to say and do along the way, right? But it's to be okay with that and to be at peace with that. That's a real sign of maturity. The other way to find peace is to give up or hide. And a lot of times that really doesn't end up bringing peace. You know, if we try to avoid conflict or avoid growing or avoid whatever, eventually if we avoid the process and avoid the growth, that's there for us, then we feel, maybe we feel ourselves start to atrophy or start to, even though there's absence of conflict, there's also an absence of like vitality in life or something.
When I was a young mother, a homemaker and a mother, most women I knew were. And as it seemed like that we should always defer to what the husband said, and you can have peace if you let him decide everything, until at home you're not at peace, because you've realized you've made that vulnerable human being into your God. And that's going to bring discomfort. But it's easy to just say, oh, let him make all the decisions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, that was society too.
That I have learned, and through what I've learned at this church, is that every problem I have, the culture is having. That's why I brought my book today on the Be Happy attitudes, because I'm thinking I misunderstand something. The culture is not where I thought it was.
Yeah. Yeah, we are definitely, we impact one another. We influence one another. We see the world in similar ways to the people around us. We probably can, if we have the prophets, if we look throughout the Bible, somebody who is a prophet is usually somebody that has the capacity to kind of step away or step back and see the bigger picture of where the community is in relationship to God's will or in relationship to where it could or should be, and then is able to point those things out. So it's the prophet really points out shortcomings or points out the highlights or the good aspects, but they're able to see the big picture. But oftentimes prophets are killed. Most of the time they are, because nobody wants to hear that mess. Nobody wants to hear the truth of where we are. It's easier to stay in the mix with everybody else. And then we just have, echo chamber is a word that we use a lot in social media. We have this echo chamber that we are in, and we just are kind of telling each other, it's okay, this is the way we are, this is normal, and not seeing the wider picture, either of our community in comparison to another, or our community in comparison to the way it has been before, the way it should be in the future. So there is a kind of a gift that the prophet has to see the imperfection. And maybe we can even say that we have a part of us, a part of us that's connected to the Holy Spirit can probably do that with ourselves, to see to get a bigger picture of where we are in life, to know where we should go from here. But the good thing here about what she's saying, Catherine of Genoa is saying, is like, it's okay that we have these. Those buttons aren't working, huh?
Not to turn it.
It'll stop.
You sound like me in technology.
I am terrible with it.
One thing about imperfections,
Adding it to.
they frustrate us sometimes when we see them, because I think we have, our actual thing within ourselves is we want to see all things as perfect. In other words, if we really truly expect it. The one thing I find also is what we say, well, no one's perfect. That's one of the things that, it just goes on. And it's an excuse for you not to look at that imperfection. And I think she's trying to put across the point, in other words, that these are actually lessons for us. In other words, to see them for our growth, our spiritual as well as our temporal growth here.
Yes.
And if we look at them as, well, nobody's perfect, and you walk away.
Right,
And, you go from there, you don't grow.
right,
And,
That's it.
right.
you get angry when something is, I get angry if I expect things to be perfect. That's my thought in my mind. I have this Bible expression that just is, be therefore perfect, even as your Father in heaven is perfect.
Sure is hard, isn't it?
And that's a tough road to
It's
follow.
hard to be perfect.
I think we'll
But
get
the
there when
thing
we
is-
get to heaven.
Yes, I think that's your
But just-
imperfection.
just strive for it.
But for right now.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that helps me is that if we look at the early stages of our life, we can especially as adults, we can look back and we can clearly see there are stages of development. And when we actually might not use the term perfection or imperfections when we're looking at our growth from the time we're born until let's say 25 years old. So in all that period, we go through so many changes, and there are certain things that we do well at certain places, and then there are certain things that we're not good at. But through time, we eventually become good at those things, and then we face other challenges. So for example, you look at like the terrible twos. You've got the toddler in this phase where it's like it appears that this human being at this stage is angry or frustrated or just easily triggered, and if you read about child development, one of the reasons is they are becoming independent in ways that they've never done before. So they've just started walking, they're starting to talk, and they realize they have autonomy. They realize that they are separate from the rest of the world around them, and so they're figuring it out.
That's scary.
And it is. It can be exciting because it's like you realize I can do whatever I want, but then at the same time it's like, oh, well, I can't run that fast and I can't reach that high and I don't have enough words to say this, and these people around me are so much bigger and they take me here and take me there when I don't want to, and they shove food in my mouth and they wash me, and it's like I don't want to do these things. And so there's they have an awareness of their new capacities, and so that's exciting, but then at the same time they're not being really treated the way that they want to be in the moment, and they can't see the bigger picture. So it's like I want to cross the street and mom and dad keep forcing me to stand here and wait, and then well, obviously we don't want them to learn the lesson of when you don't look both ways you get hit by a car.
Yeah,
It's
you
not a
don't want them
lesson
to
that
learn
you
the
can
hard way.
recover from the next day, so that's just one stage. And then think of the teenage stage as kind of another autonomy, adulthood. You're as big as mom and dad almost, and your voice is getting to be the same, and your body is looking closer to that, and you have the energy and the intelligence, and you think I've arrived, I'm an adult, and these people keep telling me that I'm not, and so there's another frustration. So if this is the case for such a huge portion of our life, the first third or 25-30% of our life is all this massive changes, why would it not continue? And
That's a good
and there's a part that is hard for us to talk about, which is the final 25% of life, because there are real positive changes related to our human journey that we experience in the last 25%. But just like in the first 25%, we go through these stages with lots of anxiety because things just aren't going the way we want. When we get to the end of life, we know what's coming. We don't like it, And a lot of our inability to really enjoy and engage this special portion of life is probably because of the anxiety of not knowing really what happens after you're gone, or who's going to take care of all these people and things that I have been caring for all this time, or there's the thing of like, how am I going to go? You know, is it going to be like this, or is it going to be like really
years of
stretched out?
suffering?
Is it going to be painful? Is it going to be humiliating? So I think we probably could look at it as this is an amazing opportunity to engage in life in a way that we haven't done before. But like the earlier stages, it's like, you know, it's challenging. The big thing here, and we'll take this one and move on to the second one, is this faith that it's really God that moves us from one stage to the next, and to be okay with that, and to be open to that, and to realize, like this says, we can't see the imperfections. I mean, and the reason, you know, well, maybe she's saying we don't see all of them. You know, I think eventually I think as we pass through that, as God's love casts them out, I think we're probably able to look back and maybe see them after they're gone. But definitely this whole idea of, can we see everything? Probably not, because it would be too much.
My granddaughter was upset about, she lives with me in Mason, and she was upset with me for something, and she said, "You're so controlling." And I really had to look at that. And then I realized my values are different than her values. You know, what's important to me, like Sunday dinner, which, you know, we just grew up with, my granddaughters they eat like birds. So some things are just not important to them. And so that was a lot of growth, because
Sure.
now I will say to them, you know, is this something that's important to you? Do you want to do it? You know,
Right.
instead of me just assuming that they have my same values.
Right.
You know, they were not,
And,
you know,
I
yeah.
think you're old-fashioned.
I'm an old fashioned, and I think traditions are important, where they're like, what do you want to use plates for? We can take these paper ones and throw them in the garbage, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it's looking at that, what's important to other people, and accepting them for who they are. That's hard.
And knowing what to say is my problem, because I used to just listen to everybody, and I know people who are still saying the same things that 30 years I've listened to. I don't want to listen anymore. But knowing what to say, to know they're just addicted to me supporting their point of view.
Yeah.
What can I say, and how can I change the subject without being dogmatic, old-fashioned, whatever? Just change over now and let me say something, or really just let me change the subject so I don't have to chew on that again.
One time we were, just real quick, we were at, when Mike was alive, we were having dinner with a bunch of people, and his sister was talking about something that I didn't like, and it was my birthday, and I just said, I'm sorry, that's not birthday talk.
Yeah.
So a couple of weeks later, her husband said to her, that's not birthday talk. We're not talking, that's not birthday talk.
Yeah, there are creative ways to have those conversations. Yeah, and there might be, on Sunday, we were talking about love, and
Yes.
compromise is that dirty word that is really key to any loving relationship. And so, but the compromise can mean a variety of different things. You know, it can mean, well, would you be willing to participate in Sunday dinner if I'm willing to participate in something that you do that I don't do? You know, is there some tradition you have that I can be willing to participate in? Even if I'm not comfortable, maybe I sit there and play a video game. Even if I don't know how to do it and I look silly, you know, if I'm willing to do that, will you be willing to do my thing? That's one way to compromise. The other way to compromise is to kind of create a new thing where it's like we are meeting together and having dinner, but we're not sitting at the table, we're sitting somewhere else. You know, we're sitting in front of the TV watching a movie together, but we're eating together and kind of talking together, but kind of not. That's a compromise. So, and you got to figure that out along the way. I think there's probably more compromising happening just in general in our culture than there was before. I think looking at earlier generations, it was my way or the highway. Kids did things a certain way, period, you know, and there wasn't a lot of openness to that. So I don't know if that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing. I mean, this is where we're at.
Wasn't it in the early Judean or Israeli culture, they had judges, and I think Rebecca was one of them that I taught in Sunday school. I think that was her name. But anyway, you came to the judge who sat at the front of the gate, and you'd say he'd tell his side, she'd tell her side, and then they'd talk about it. Well, the Israelis, they got sick of that, and they said, everybody else has a king, we want somebody in charge. So they got a king, and the judges were thrown out. Well, that didn't go any better. That was still hard, and then you didn't have control of anything, not even compromise.
Right.
So I think this has gone on so long that I'm glad I see the culture moving where it is right now. It's ahead of Rebecca and the Saul and all those people.
So we're a big part of it. You know, we hear the word postmodernism a lot, and that's kind of a word that kind of describes where we are in general. And if we were to kind of simplify what that means, postmodernism really questions everything. So if the first time that I kind of came across the term or studied it was in college, and I minored in theater, and one of the classes that I took was a theater writing class. So we're writing plays and reading plays, and so we talked about the postmodern influence on certain plays. And in those plays, a lot of times what they would do is they would question a lot of things. They would question, I think it's called the third wall. They would question this wall, this barrier that is traditionally there in a theater performance. The traditional wall is kind of like you watching the TV. The actors don't interact with the audience because they're not in the play, right? The audience is there watching, and we imagine that to ourselves, the actors imagine the audience doesn't exist, and the audience imagines that the actors are not a part of real life, they're just to be watched, right? So that's like, I think that's called the third wall. So in postmodernism, they question that. And then so what they started doing is the actors started like coming off the stage and like talking to the audience and pulling them up on stage, and they became an actor. And it was like, what are you doing? You're breaking the rules. And so the postmodernists say, well, what are the rules really, you know? And so I think theater in the round became another thing during that time period. So it was like, instead of a stage here, you know, and the audience out here, it's in the middle and you're surrounded. So it's kind of this three-dimensional, it's more immersive.
Actually,
So
the layout of the sanctuary.
that's one of the ways that that postmodernism had an influence. The other way is in the roles of the characters. So they may have a character that's like the father, but then the father doesn't really have the typically father characteristics. You know, the father, instead of, and we're so used to this now, but the father, instead of being kind of the strong figure, the leader of the family, the decision maker, the father is, you know, kind of an idiot, and kind of get bossed around, and it's kind of like the butt of the joke, right? So this is like, think of the 80s of Married with Children.
Well, yeah, Married with Children.
Al Bundy is like, you know, he's the dad that gets no respect because why should we respect this idiot person, you know? So this is actually kind of an outgrowth of the postmodernist movement that questions and says, does a dad have to be this way? Does a dad really know all the answers? Is a dad really that strong? You know, is it really the end of the world if you stand up to dad? So the postmodern movement, and it probably starts before the 60s, it starts to come really alive in the 60s, and we're fully into it now, where we just question pretty much everything, you know. And there's a lot of good that can happen in that, because it makes you understand things more when you question them, because a lot of times you didn't even really think about things that much. You just accepted the way that they are, and it's not until they get questioned that you really understand them better. The downside is that in postmodernism, and this is an oxymoron to say this, there are no absolutes.
Except that.
which is not possible, right? So the postmodernist says there are no black and whites, but that doesn't make sense to say there's no black and whites, because that's a black and white. But the question now is, do we have some things that are absolutes in our life, that are true and real? You know, is there a better way to live your life? Is there a standard that can be set that we all can kind of like shoot for in some degree? So we're at a place now where what happens after the postmodern questions everything, we don't want to be left with just everything's torn apart and there's nothing left. We want to be left with something. Hopefully it's an improved thing. So we're at a stage where we got to figure out kind of what the standards are. All right. I don't know how we got that.
But
I
that's
think-
not black and white.
I think,
we have a lot of things that are like different shades of gray now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you know
Sure.
what I mean, it's like, it's a combination, you know, we go one way and it's a little darker,
Yeah.
other way is a little, there just isn't a total black and white
Right.
division.
Right.
I think some kind of hard life mold you into a strong person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
When I was a child, my mother left me at a young age and went to England. And my little sister, they sent for her first, and because her husband went to England, and then she sent for her, and it was 5 children. So a careless aunt was left in charge.
Mm.
She would, when they send the money, she would be gone with a man and the money is in her pocket and she didn't even go to the bank and change it.
Mm.
You know, things like that. So life was not good.
Mm-hmm.
And that strengthens me. Because I actually became the mother, although my brother was bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he went about his business. And I became the mother, and I put my foot down on the smaller ones.
You grew up in a hurry.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, then she sent for them.
Mm.
That was for her husband, because my bigger brother and me were a different father.
Oh.
And then she sent for the ones for her husband that is in England.
Mm-hmm.
So all 3 went to England, and the 2 of us were left there.
Mm.
And that I think that strengthens me,
Mm.
because I would go to school, come home and cook my food. When they send the money to me, I will give it to an old lady to keep for me,
Mhm.
and I will take it a little at a time. I will go to school, when I go to school and they call me at the office, children will sit and say, school fee didn't pay,
Oh, no.
you know? Yeah. So that's kind of embarrassment, and I get up and determine that, no. When it's time for summer camp, and when I go to my friend's house, they say they are going to camp. I remember one day I said, I'm never gonna ask them. I asked my mother to send me, and she said she didn't have the money. So she did send it. And when I went to their house, tears in my eye. When I come out, I said, this is never gonna happen to me again. I went down to the bank, and I was a child, actually. I went down and I opened an account, and they gave me, that time it was they gave me a little pan like this. And I started to help a girl who was sewing. When I go to school and come back, I help her. She would cut and I would stitch, because my mother was a dressmaker and I had a machine, so I knew how to sew. And I would stitch the clothes, I would stitch up for her, and she would give me a little money.
Oh,
And I took it, I put it down, and I took it to the bank. And they laugh at me. But I said, I am going to camp next year, and nobody's going to stop me. And I went, when she gave me the little money, like a 5 shilling, I would put it away until I have like a pound, but that time we were pound, shilling and pence. I took it down to the bank, and they're looking at me as, I told them I want to open an account, and they gave me the account, and they gave me the little pan. And every time I do the work for, they would give me like a few shillings. I drop it in that pan, and I can't open the pan. The bank has to open it.
Like a piggy bank, huh?
So when it is full, I take it down to the bank, and they would open it and
What a great idea.
give me a little, give me the little book, the account, and I would take it home, and I would, every minute I would go and look at it, how much is in there. So I really pride myself on that, because I said,